Okay, hi Year 9s. Okay, to begin our GCSE work, we're going to be looking at core materials for the next few lessons. And we're going to concentrate on things like timber, polymers and metals. But to begin with, we're going to be looking at the manufacturing process of paper. Now, next lesson, we're going to be looking at different papers and cards and the textures and different finishes of them and what the uses and properties are. But for today, what I want you to be looking at mainly is how paper is manufactured, and I want you to make some notes and maybe do a little drawing of it. So you can see on the screen at the minute we've got a little animation there, and you can see the tree is basically being fed through what are essentially is a chipping machine, and that will then have all the little wood chips go into hot boiling water, which is then boiled down, and all that's left eventually is what's called paper pulp, the wood pulp, which is going to make the paper. That'll get treated with different things, starches and different bonding agents, and eventually it is left to be put on a mesh which will drain out and eventually pressed and rolled into the various thicknesses and finishes that you want. Now I'm going to pop a little video on now just to show you the different ways of doing it, and I'd like you to make a few notes on it, okay?
Paper is an important part of our everyday lives. We use it for communicating, connecting, and having fun with each other. But how is paper actually made? How do we turn wood into sheets of paper for our use? We plant over 150 million trees in our plantations every year before they're transported to our mills to be turned into paper. Paper making actually involves various processes to turn that wood log into our everyday paper products. However, there are 3 key steps to the process of paper making. 1. Pulping. 2. Paper making. 3. Finishing. To kickstart the pulping process, the logs are debarked. The bark has to be stripped from the logs since it cannot be used in paper making. The water used is filtered on the spot and reused for other logs, reducing the amount of water wastage. Together with other byproducts of the manufacturing process, they are used to generate electricity to power up the mills and nearby towns. The debarked logs are then chipped into small pieces before undergoing a process called chemical pulping. This process breaks down a chemical called lignin, and the result is pulp. Pulp is like a thicker, less refined version of paper. After being meshed, screened and dried, they can be used to make high-volume commodity printing products like newsprint and magazine paper. But to be turned into paper, the pulp needs a little bit more work. It is pumped into a large paper-making machine, which stretches almost 4 times the length of an Olympic-sized swimming pool and stands as high as a 3-story building. Starting at the first section called the head box, the pulp mass is squirted through a horizontal slit over a moving wire mesh to remove excess water. Here, the fibres begin to spread out and take the form of a thin sheet, thus giving this part of the process its name, sheet formation. Moving at almost 90 kilometers an hour, the thin mats are fed into the press section, where up to 50% of the water content is squeezed out. Up to 90% of water in this entire manufacturing process is also recycled. Things then start heating up as the sheets are dried at above 100 degrees Celsius over a series of cast iron cylinders. But the journey for premium quality paper doesn't end there. A film of chemicals is applied to the surface of the dried paper to improve the properties of the paper before being wound onto 8.5-meter wide jumbo reels. But of course, most of our printers can't print on paper of those dimensions, so the jumbo reels have to be cut up into smaller pieces. These smaller sheets of paper are then further processed before being wrapped and packed into our familiar Paper One packaging. before being stacked into cartons and shipped worldwide, delivered to your doorstep, ready to be the launchpad of your next masterpiece.
Okay, so after that video, like I said, I'd like you to read it and look at how you could do a little how to make paper diagram. Okay, so paper comes in standard sizes. We generally use A3 and A4 at school because that's what we use in the printers mainly, and also that's what we draw on and use in our folder work. But it can go up to A8 really, which is quite tiny. A0 is the biggest one, and if you fold that in half, you get A1. And if you fold A1 in half, you get A2. If you fold A2 in half, you get A3, which is usually the one that we'd be using. If you fold that in half, it gives you A4, and eventually, if you keep doing that, you'll get down to A6. Once you pass A6, though, it does tend to get a bit funny trying to bend it, but you can see on the diagram at the bottom how it all fits in. Grams per square metre is how it is weighed. Now, paper is generally anything under 200 is classed as paper. Anything over that is classed as card. And card is slightly different from paper because that is usually made up of several layers made up to make it a thicker, more substantial, usable product. So it would have to go through something called laminating, which is basically very thin pieces of paper, which are then glued together, pressed together to create a thicker version. Alright, so that would be how your card would be made. Now I've popped a little YouTube video up there for you again, which is basically showing you the paper folding and what sizes they are. You do really need to know this because it is important when you are doing any folder work, know what the size and the layout of your paper is going to be, and also if you are transferring anything to print, you know, you've got to be able to select the correct sizes in order to print it at, how you want it to. So it is important that you know and are clear what A3 and A4 definitely mean. The other ones you might be asked to use to make an A5 drawing, so you do need to be able to know reasonably what these are. You probably won't use A1 or A2 in design technology. Okay, so for your work today, I would like you to produce a diagram on the production of paper, the manufacture of it, what it goes through. Use that video several times to click through it, stop it, have a look at the different processes, and do me a little A4, now that you know what that is, an A4 sheet describing the manufacturing process. And that is it for this lesson. Next lesson will be a lot more to do. We're going to be looking at paper and card, all of the properties and all of the uses for those. So you will need pen and paper so that you can start writing notes. So you do need to start thinking about producing some form of workbook that you can remember all this information, because you will need it. Okay, so I'll see you next time. Thank you.